Hello and welcome to my latest preview video on MIDI Strummer. Now, the original concept for this app came from a MIDI module that I created for NuRack, but because it's under the hood of NuRack it's slightly limited, and I always wanted to take that idea and make it a standalone app and add a ton of features, and that's exactly what I've done here. So I'm going to take you through exactly what this program does. So let's take a quick look at what MIDI Strummer has to offer, and we'll start with the interface layout. Now, for the benefits of guitarists out there, we display the actual chord up in the top left corner, and that gives you a graphical representation of which notes have been played. And below the pattern editor you'll notice these 16 pads which allow you to assign chords to them. So what I'm going to select a chord and turn on the app, which will play the pattern that's in the pattern editor above. And that will begin to cycle the pattern, so you can actually sit there and edit the pattern as it's playing. And there's a 12 note option as well, which actually doubles up the notes to create quite pleasing sound. Now, what you're listening to here is MIDI Strummer's own internal sound font engine, and that can be turned off, so you're just outputting pure MIDI data. And once hosted as an AUv3, you can send that MIDI data to any app of your choice. This is the section where you can select your sound font. You can import your own sound fonts. We have a whole suite of effects here as well you can use, such as EQ and distortion and chorus and phaser and digital delay and reverb and so on, all the things you would expect. And if we scroll down a little further, we get to the song editor, which I'll go through in detail a little bit later. Probably the easiest way to create strumming patterns is actually to randomize your own, and this is a great example of that. Let's just listen. Now, to the right of the actual editor, you will see 6 options, A to F, and they control the variations, so you can actually random different variations or different patterns into each of those. Now, a pattern itself can be up to 64 beats long, so there's a lot of variety can be had there. Let's take a closer look and start with an empty grid. We can change that grid size, like I said, to anything we want, and it's a scrollable interface. But just for the sake of this example, I'll set it back to 16. Now, you lay a note just by tapping and dragging your finger, and with your finger held down you can actually drag your finger up and down to change the velocity of the note you add. Just a simple tap will just add a single note. Now, you can move a note by tapping and holding to the left side of the note and just dragging it to its new position. And you can change the length or the velocity of a note by tapping the last element of the note and then just dragging your finger left, right, up and down to make any adjustments you require. Now, we also have a number of default app strumming patterns and picking patterns here. So let's just take a listen to one. So if you select one, press play. Now, you may have noticed the little arrows, upward and downward facing arrows on each column. That is because we can actually pick the strum up or down for each column of that pattern. Now, anyone that's familiar with NuRack will be familiar with the version of the strummer we have in NuRack. But let's just start this out going, and listen carefully as I adjust these settings. So hopefully you could hear those differences when I adjusted the velocity variation and the velocity curve and the note length. 3 features that I've added which I think make this sound a whole lot better. Now when I tap on one of these 16 chord pads, it actually cues up a chord change. The chord change happens when at the specific sync period, and you can also decide whether to continue a pattern or start again from the beginning. Now, chord switching, pattern switching and various other features can all be controlled via MIDI, so you could purely do it that way if you want. But I want to have a look at song mode. So to create a song, you simply press the add button and then pick a series of chords to insert into the song chain. You can select any one of these chain events and then change the length of it. You can also change the variation number, A to F. You can also change whether it's a 6-string or a 12-string, and you can also say whether the pattern is a continuous pattern or it starts back at the beginning. Now, to aid song construction, we have a cut, copy and paste options at the bottom, and we can select a range of events and paste at the current event position. So that's a nice way of actually moving blocks around. Now, to replace a chord, we just click on the event number we want to replace and hit the replace button, and then pick a chord from this list. You may also want to have silence for so many bars, so you can hit the empty button, which actually sticks an empty container in there, and we can actually set the length of that container. So let's take a listen to another example, and I'll point out a few of these features and event changes as they're happening. So as you can see, the reset pattern option works really well, say if you're running through a fast set of chords and want to emphasise that first bass note of the chord. Now, as well as MIDI Strummer creating MIDI output which can be sent to other instruments, you can also control MIDI Strummer with note and control information. So if we take a quick look in the help file, there is a section on MIDI Control that actually lists what MIDI notes and CC values do what. So here's a quick example of us changing chord via incoming MIDI notes. And an example driving sample tank. And finally, an example of changing variations using MIDI. That's about it for for this MIDI Strummer tutorial or preview. There'll be more in-depth tutorials coming soon, but for now, thank you for watching. See you next time.